Hey, NorCal Carters, Jason here. And today, I know it's 10:30 a.m., but today we have a special show. We're going to be joined by Adam from Hoosier Tires, and today is going to be Kart Tire Tech. So if you have questions, post them in the comments. And again, we'll also do a replay on this on the next Monday at 7:30 on our normal NorCal Monday show. We'll do a replay of this. So if you're happening to catch this live, chat away, ask your questions. And without further ado, let's bring up Adam Batton. And I need to double check I spelled his or pronounced his name right. So Adam, introduce yourself to our guests.
Yes, I'm Adam Batton with Hoosier Racing Tire. I am the business unit manager for circuit racing here at Hoosier. I've been working with the company since 2005, so going on 18 years. Started out working with karting and quarter midget tires specific, both 5 and 6 inch bead size tires, and then did more of a lateral shift into the road racing segment around 2014. And I've been working over there with strictly left and right hand turn applications only, including rally. So pretty diversified portfolio that we have to handle here at Hoosier, and just appreciate you guys having me on the show.
Well, thanks for joining us today. And then we'll bring you back up here in about 45 seconds. And last but not least, our NCK president, Mark Morrison. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good, guys. How's it going?
Doing great. Thanks for joining us.
Good. I hope this should be a great information session here on tires.
It will. We have a lot of questions lined up for Adam. And before we get into that, hey, Larry Dobbs, thanks for tuning in. Mark, what do you have to cover? What's going on tonight?
Tonight at, I believe, 7:30, we'll be doing another live broadcast with Rob Soares from Aluminos. And then we'll talk a little bit about NCK, and then we'll also do tonight's drawing for the free entry for the Thunder Hill race coming up the 1st and 2nd of April.
All right. Free race entry through the raffle for April 1st and 2nd. So without further ado, all right. Welcome, gentlemen.
All right. Let's get this show going.
Let's get this show going. Yes. So Adam is a very busy person, not like Mark and myself. So
I wouldn't say that. You guys are busy as well. So
So, let's get to it. So Adam, thanks for the introduction. And Mark is definitely the road racer. I'm more of the sprint racer. My background with the karting stuff is in sprint racing. It seems like everything is spec tire. But then we have the NCK guys where they have the open tire. So thank you for joining us. I know a number of Mark's racers use the Hoosiers out there. And, so let's get to it. Probably one of the basic questions people have. We could probably, if there's going to be a specific answer for road race versus sprint racing, we're going to keep it all asphalt, all Grand Prix style. But maybe you could differentiate. It's like if you know there's a certain setup for road race versus sprint, that way our listeners can kind of bookmark that for themselves. But this has got to be probably the number one question you ever get. Where should I start my tire pressures?
yeah, and it's sort of a loaded question because there's so many variables at play here, starting with the class of kart that we're working with, the track condition as far as ambient conditions go, as far as temperature, is the track green or is it rubbered up at all? The type of aggregate that we're working with, that's a big variable as well. So we do have some general starting points on HoosierKartSport.com based on compound, but generally speaking, with softer compounds that we offer in our portfolio, like the R55, R60A, we usually run those on more severe applications with shifters or KAs. And so we like to start a little bit lower into the range, anywhere from 9 to 11 PSI. And there could be a compound split front to rear. It just depends on driver preference or chassis setup. Then as you work towards the medium hard range of the compounds, you're going to see that pressure creep up, that range creep up about 2 to 3 pounds overall cold. And then as you get to the super hards, like the R70s and the R80s, which is used in the Ignite series, then that range again creeps up another 2 to 3 pounds. So shifters, KAs, softer compounds, you're looking at 9 to 11. R60Bs, some R60 applications where they're not as severe, you're going to look at 11 to 13. And then your super hards like R70s and R80s, you're going to be somewhere between 13 and 15 to start. And this is all cold pressures, not hot.
Okay. And then when you said the R70s, in that, did you say the Ignite series?
Yeah, the Ignite series runs an even harder compound than the R70 called an R80.
Okay.
So you're looking at a durometer range. The softest durometer we have is going to be the 55, R55, and it's about 55 durometer by coincidence, 55 to 57. And then the hardest compound being the R80, it's going to be closer to 70 to 72. And this is all, lab numbers at 70 degrees Fahrenheit in a controlled setting measured with lab equipment, not with durometers.
Not with a durometer. Okay.
Correct. Yeah, there's, all three of us could take a tire right now. We could measure it and we could all get different readings on it just based on where we position the durometer on the tire, based on how much pressure that you put on the tire, based on what area of the tire that you actually punched. Because if you happen to stab a tire with a durometer and was sitting in the sun, it's going to read much lower than it would on the shaded side. So all that stuff needs to be taken into account to be thorough with the durometer readings on a tire.
Got it. Yeah, and that all makes sense to me. And then for those that don't know, the Margay Ignite series, that is the spec series for Briggs & Stratton out there in the Midwest. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's a spec chassis, spec tire, spec engine. It basically puts everything in the driver's hand. And it's pretty cost effective. It's a good entry level. And I mean, very, very experienced karters are also in there as well. It's not just entry level, but if you're getting into karting, you're not mechanically inclined, it's a good starting point. It's pretty hands off, hands free as far as maintenance goes and tuning.
So for our Briggs racers out there, I know I get a lot of slack, and it's self. What is that word? I do it to myself. It's self-inflicting because I bag on the Briggs guys. But it's probably right now the biggest segment of karting out there. And a lot, I'm just tagged as a shifter guy, but when I race my local tracks, I'm racing a Briggs. So I don't hate the Briggs stuff. But so if you're running the Briggs, so you're saying the R70, R80, that's a good starting point if you have an open tire program for the Briggs guys.
Actually, it depends. If it's open tire, we have a lot of street court racing here in the Midwest. Actual temporary circuits that are set up on city blocks like Rock Island, Commercial Point, things like that.
Out there too, don't you?
I'm sorry?
The SIRA, Southern Indiana Racing
Yeah,
Association?
exactly. SIRA, that series is completely dedicated to temporary circuits across the state of Indiana. And so those tracks, actually, the Briggs will run the R60As because they want something that's soft for a track it's not a purpose-built track, right? So the streets have a lot of cracks in them. They don't have any grip, a lot of large voids. It's not really the best, highest performing type of pavement that you will race on. So naturally, they want the softest thing they could find in order to get a hold of that type of pavement with the Briggs. But typically on a purpose-built sprint track, we're usually spec R70 or spec R80 for Ignite. Anything non-Ignite would run R70 just because they can get 3 to 4 weekends out of those tires. And again, it's pretty consistent, can take a lot of heat, take a lot of abuse. And, it's for the budget racer. It keeps the budget racer in mind. Yeah.
And years ago here in NorCal, we used to have Bridgestone YDSs or YBNs and very hard tires. And the local manufacturers always felt that if you can keep racers on the track with a budget, they'll stay longer. And for years, it was very successful. Pretty much till the advent of the European chassis coming over, and they preferred the stickier tire.
Right.
Yeah. But okay, we have a question in from Larry Dobbs. He's a road racer, so he used to be out here on the West Coast. Now he's out there in the Midwest Michigan region. Let's see here. Weight of cart require more or less pressure?
Yeah, and that's going to depend on. We like to go off driver feedback and feel. I mean, it's not black and white all the time that a heavier cart requires more air pressure, because if they have a softer, stiffer setup, that's really going to influence more so what kind of pressure start out with the cart, and also their driver preference. A lot of it is really on what they feel comfortable riding on.
Does that do it for you, Larry?
And I can be more specific, Larry. I mean, generally speaking, if a neutral setup, if you have a 400-pound cart versus a 500-pound cart, you're going to want to go up 1 to 2 pounds. But if you have a more specific type of setup where you have more caster in the cart and you're stressing the tires out more than someone who has no caster at the same weight as you do, then yeah, you're going to want to run even more pressure than somebody else at the same weight. So it really kind of boils down to how much energy are you channeling into the tire to where you're not overloading or over contorting the tire and it doesn't, hurt your rib. I'm thinking of a sprint application. You don't want something too low to where it's hurting your ribs. You got to raise the air pressure up to help make it more consistent when it cars through the corner, as opposed to just kind of wrinkling up the sidewall, wadding up, and causing a lot of abuse to your ribs. So I know I'm going in circles here, but it really does depend on two carts at 400 pounds. Let's look at the setup. Is it neutral or is it tuned with a lot of mechanical grip into it? The one with more mechanical grip, I'm always going to run more air pressure because they're going to stress the tire out more than the person with the neutral setup.
So Larry's running a super cart.
Correct.
Okay.
And then you got into the loading issue when you're talking about when Larry touched on the subject with the heavier carts or the lighter carts. One of the questions I had for you: does Hoosier have a certain recommendation for their asphalt tires for breaking in the tire, or the first heat cycle and how to properly do that, or is it just flat out throw the cart around the track, slide it around as much as you can? What would Hoosier say as far as a proper way to get that first heat cycle in and break that tire in?
Yeah, again, this is all application dependent. So on a shifter, I think it's very critical to put a heat cycle on a tire because A, they're very severe on the tires. B, they generate a lot of heat. And then C, they typically run softer compounds. So softer compounds respond quite well to heat cycling, as far as if you put a 5-lap stint on a tire, just scrub them in gently. You run 5 total laps, meaning that you start out at like 50%, work up on lap 4 to 100%, do a 5th lap cool down, bring the cart in. And if you can let the tires sit 24 hours, that's always ideal because it's like an additional curing process, if you want to call it that. It helps that compound, that softer compound, not only wear better, but also perform more consistent at higher heat or higher temperatures on a severe cart like a shifter. You go the other end of the spectrum where you're running R80s on Ignite, it's really not that necessary. The only thing you want to do there is, instead of going out on a very slick tire that's new, just knock the slick or the shine off of it and go race on it, go pound on it. It'll take the abuse because the cart's not severe and the compound's really very robust. It's over-engineered for the application.
All right. I like that answer. So Briggs guys, fly out of the pits.
So that comes up to choice of compounds. I mean, so so let's say we'll go back to the supercard again. If I'm not mistaken, there's 2 compounds.
There's just one right now, Mark. It's
okay,
just
there's one.
Yes.
Okay, and then all right. So there's the one compound. So, and then in the 5-inch, isn't there like an R55 and an R60A for the 5-inch for road racing?
Yes, exactly. There are. So I would categorize the 55 and the 60 as being a soft, and then we have a 60B that's a medium, and then we have the 70, which is a hard, and then we have the 80, which is a super hard.
So I'm new to racing, and I'm running Thunder Hill, which isn't really an abrasive track. So how would I choose compound versus track surface, or is there such a thing like that?
Yeah, the best go-to for us is going strictly to our club spec, which is an R60B. It kind of melds performance with durability, and it can withstand a lot of heat. So that's sort of a middle ground. If you run that compound tire and you're like, man, this thing's too hard, then the next step is to go to a 60A. And if it's just right, you stick with it. But if you're like, I think I need something harder. I don't want to put on a set every other weekend. I'd rather extend the life out of this, then you go to an R70 and you pretty much stop there. I mean, we really don't have too many people go much further than that as far as the R80 goes in an open competition environment.
Does the abrasion of the track affect tire compound choice too?
Yes. So again, the type of aggregate really plays a role. I know on the West Coast, a lot of tracks out there have been sort of sun beaten. They're pretty smooth. There's just not a lot of grip in them. So we typically would like to run something as soft as we can get away with without wearing them out too fast. And again, it depends on the comfort level or the budget level of the individual that we're talking to as well. I mean, if they are comfortable putting on a set every weekend, then I would go with the 60 or the 55. If they're not comfortable doing that, the next logical step is go with the 60B and see how that fits within their performance window as well as their budget window.
And there again, when people put on
over here in the Midwest, though, I mean, we get away with R60B and R70s more often just because our tracks. Sorry, go ahead.
Now I lost my thought. Go ahead and finish yours.
We might have a little bit of buffering going on here. Let's see. Do you have a delay on your end, Adam?
Right. I did, but I hear you just fine.
Oh, okay. So it's one of maybe it's Mark's connection there. Let's see here. Do you want to answer Mark's question or finish your thought, and then we'll get back?
I don't remember what the question was.
Oh, okay. Well, let's get to Larry.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear his question. What was his question?
Oh, Mark, he couldn't hear your question. You want to repeat it?
I don't remember what I asked.
Oh, I can't hit rewind yet. It'll come back up. You were talking about different track conditions and aggregates, Mark.
Right. And different compounds. So it's basically a trial and error then for.
I got how long? This. That's all I heard.
Oh, Jason, go ahead and you continue.
Okay, Mark, log off for a second and log back in.
All right.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna remove Mark for a second, and he's gonna try another connection. So we have Larry Dobbs chiming in. Is flipping the tires okay?
Larry Dobbs, yeah, it certainly is. I mean, we would like you to run those in the direction of the rotational arrows for the first heat cycle. Then after that, you can flip the tires on the rims or reverse them from side to side as needed.
Okay. Now, I know with some of the other manufacturers, from my understanding, the arrow indicates the direction because of how the rubber is laid on the tire. Is it possible if people run the arrows backwards? Correct. That is correct. And then is it possible the tire can unwrap?
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Is it possible if you mount your tires opposite of the arrows? Is it possible they'll unwrap?
I mean, with our product, with our products, no, that's not the case. I can't speak for everybody else's. I mean, the worst case that you would see is just a very minor cosmetic, line begin to form, but it's very, very rare cases that would happen.
Okay. So it'd be a line where
almost like a part line,
where the overlay of the rubber happens.
Yeah, it looks like a minor. Correct. Yes.
Okay. All right, Mark. Let's try you out again.
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear, Mark.
Oh, all right, thank you. So if a person is looking at his tire and it's and as far as the wear pattern because of toe and stuff like that looks fine, but let's say that the tire is more crowned, it's crowned and it's worn in the center, that's obvious that it's too much air pressure, correct?
That is correct, yes. Or it's the signs of an understeer. And if you're able to correct that understeer, you could run the tire crowned if you can get the balance restored in the cart.
Okay, and then also we've talked air pressure a little bit. Is checking your tires with a durometer a good way to figure out the longevity of the tire?
I wouldn't say longevity of the tire. One of our compounders told me way back when I started that, he goes, Adam, I can make you 12 different variants, all with a 60 durometer, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference as far as the type it has, type of wear it has, it's all that stuff. It's all embedded into the magic chemistry they put into the rubber. But what it does tell you is that, I was at a test recently where it was about 65 degrees ambient, and we had a 65 durometer tire on there, and it was very loose and icy. We went to 60 durometer, much better, and then we ended up at 55, and it was the best of all. So I mean, if anything, the durometer can just give you a reference of what direction you need to go on the tire. If you're a little bit loose and you punch the tire and it's 60, you're like, okay. If you have the option to go to something softer for that condition, put on a 68 fixes a lot of your problems in that cold condition where the track's green, But that's not always the case. If the cart's loose and you're stuck with that durometer, raising the air pressure will help that tire fire up quicker and just feel more confident when the tracks are cool or they just lack overall grip.
Okay. Because in the past, I'll use me as the individual. I'll durometer the tire and it's an average of, let's say, 55. And then I go out, I come back in, and now all of a sudden it's 65 or 70. So I'm assuming that the tire went away. The life of the tire is basically gone.
Well, you got to be careful here. I mean, that's not really a fair assessment, just because as the tire wears down and gets thinner, then the needle is getting closer to the carcass of the tire. So you're not actually measuring the rubber anymore. You're measuring more of the actual carcass.
Okay.
And sometimes that can be offset with, adding more mechanical grip to the cart or increasing air pressure to help get more grip out of a thinner tread tire, because the thinner the tread, the cooler the compound runs, which means the harder it's going to be at operating temperature too. That's a big part of it. So when people say a tire's really gone away, it's not always the case. For that track, maybe it's no good, but like for Daytona, for example, you can or Mid-Ohio even, you can get away with older tires. In fact, they prefer older tires because there's so much grip at those tracks. More so Mid-Ohio, I should say, than Daytona. But Mid-Ohio is a classic example where we try to find used tires. And we have an old saying here in the race tire business, that new tracks require old tires, old tracks require new tires.
Interesting.
But you guys aren't in the used tire business.
No, we're not. We're not a used tire.
Let's see here. So we got Dobbs on there, flipping the tires okay. Larry's coming up with some good questions here. We got a question from Tompkins Motorsport. But real quick, let's get a shout out from Edson Mitchell to Mark. Mark is one great leader for the old school road racing here in the North, which is so valuable for young drivers that want to go the next level. Is this Edson Mitchell? Is this our Prairie City coffee guy?
It is.
So, it is, isn't it?
That's him.
That's him.
That's him. He brought his grandson out, I believe, last year to Thunder Hill, maybe, in an old enduro cart to run it for a day.
Okay. That would have been Travis.
Yes, I believe so.
Very polite young man. He's been on our show a number of times.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in, Edson. Let's see here. Let's go to Tompkins Motorsport. What is a good hot temp for a R70 when coming off the track?
Yeah, that's another one of those robust compounds. It likes to run a little bit hotter, actually. So if you're anywhere in the 180 to 240 window, I'd say you're doing pretty good. And that compound can easily go 260 plus. So you don't have to worry about any kind of blistering or anything like that.
Okay. And then when they're talking about hot temp, would this be using a probe sensor or would this be using an infrared sensor?
If you use an infrared, just add 30 degrees. I can understand the hesitation. I want to stick tires with needles, especially since these are very soft bias plies. I've poked holes in them myself. So if you want to take the more conservative route to make sure you don't put holes in your tires, just add 30 degrees to an infrared reading.
Okay. You've actually poked a hole with the probe?
I did.
Yeah.
When I first started here, yeah, actually I had 3 of them all the way across the tire.
All right, let's see here. Oh, and then you already answered the question. Let's see. Mark, do you know what compound Larry Dobbs is racing on the supercart? Because he's asking, is there a heat range?
Yes.
120 to 130.
He's on the. They only have the one compound, which is the 60As, right?
60Bs.
60B.
Yes. So I'd say 120 to 130 would have been really good for the R60A. You probably want to bump that up to about 140 to 150 minimum for the 60B. And again, that does vary by track. That temperature range could go down as you have a higher grip track. I mean, we don't race at this track, but Watkins Glen is a prime example. Those things could grip up at room temp because that track has so much natural grip in the surface. You know, you don't need to be at 140 degrees to feel confident and push 10/10s.
Okay.
So if you're a new karter and you're tuning in and you wonder why there's spec tire programs everywhere, I think Adam is hitting on some great topics of, oh, you can change this compound, you can do this, you can do that. And so there's your answer to why we have spec tires throughout the country in karting.
Yeah,
unless you want a trailer full of tires.
Well, it's just one variable to rule out. If everybody's on the same tire, then you know it's not tire, it's all driver and setup related.
Yep. Let's see here. Larry Dobbs. If I push it really, really hard, my tires come off blue. What does that mean? Blue color after use mean anything?
Yeah, and that's just some of the, the compound, I guess you want to call it the oils of the compound coming to the surface is all. And it's usually because they're stored in a hot trailer. Nothing to be alarmed about. You just go out there and run them again. It'll clean right up. It's not going to affect the performance of the tire. In fact, I've seen tires perform at their best when they came out of the trailer blue, more so in severe conditions, where there was a lot of heat and a lot of wear at the track. So,
and then that leads me into one of my questions I was going to wrap the show up with. But what is a good way? We already talked about braking in the tire. If you can, if it's a stickier one, let it sit for 24 hours. But what is a good way to store your tire between race events so they have longer longevity?
Yeah,
that's a concern.
Yeah, the ideal thing to do, we always say, is, since they're kart tires, you can put them in a trash bag, put a whole set in a trash bag, a dark trash bag, tie that up and put it in a crawl space somewhere, in a cool, dark place that's at ambient, 68, 70 degrees. And keep it out of any kind of sunlight, which emits UV, or any electric motors that emit ozone, because those will dry out the tires. If you're going to put them in your trailer and leave them in a tire rack, I would prefer to, put some type of wrap around them. Just kind of helps the tire, I guess, not from drying out a little bit.
So is Hoosier going to, instead of a wine fridge, is Hoosier going to come out with a tire fridge?
A purple trash bag in a fridge? Yeah, there you go.
This was a great vintage.
Yeah, not a bad idea.
Let's see here. Question from Scott. DeSelms? The big question is, can these used tires be recycled and by these different manufacturers in a place to take them to? Oh, okay. Yeah. I'll let you hint on that, and then I might have an answer for that as well.
Yeah, I think your answer is going to be better than mine. I mean, when it comes to kart tires, I don't have a good answer for recycling those, because the big tires, we all just cut, scrap, and send them off to a tire shredder here locally. So my guess is if you have a local recycling establishment out there that can take tires off your hands, I think you'll probably pay a disposal fee. I'm not sure what the nominal amount is, but it's only a few bucks here. I would recommend doing that. A tire recycling center.
In California, it gets pretty stringent. And I know Scott is out of California here. Most of our tracks tell you to take the tires home. And the reason for that is I had a local company quote a garbage container, and it was about $2,000 for them to fill the tire container and then take it to a shredder out here. So those that operate the tracks, imagine just having another $2,000 bill to add on top of your fees.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah, we're fortunate that we service a lot of events direct here, so we have all these recycling trailers here every week that we just offload used tires, including karting stuff, and just throw everything in one big container and send it off to the recycling.
Yeah. So if somebody wants to sponsor NorCal Karters, we can sponsor dumpsters and put them out at every track, and NorCal Karters will be responsible for making the calls and having those tires picked up. The track operators would appreciate it, but sounds like out there in the Midwest, it's the same as California.
Yeah, get your local tire recycling center to come on as a sponsor. That'd be huge.
Yeah. Oh, I've been working on it on the side, and one of the issues we run into is after, especially like our Briggs racers, there's just nothing left of the tire as far as on a rubber side of it. So it's not very, I guess, industrious for them to recycle our tires. because there's just not much left. They do, but they don't. There's no value to them.
They make great retaining walls if you live out in the boonies.
That's right. And planners,
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 retaining walls.
yeah.
Pull toys for big dogs.
Yeah. PSI. Okay. Oh, Tompkins Motorsport. So Adam talked about tire pressures in about the first 5 minutes of the show. He went through the different compounds and addressed, again, starting ranges on the tire compound. Are you still with us, Adam, or do we freeze up? Oh.
Oh.
All right.
I think he froze up.
I think he froze up. He'll be back with us. So Tompkins Motorsports, like the first 5 minutes of the show, Adam went down the list of the different compounds and basic starting ranges. So that was there. Let's see.
Sorry, I lost you guys.
No, we got you back.
Okay.
I figured you just weren't staring in my eyes. All right. Thanks, Scott, for tuning in. We're going to have more shows like this throughout the year. Let's see. Ollie's been on the show before.
Ollie?
What's the life
This man's calling from England.
All right.
So a quick little story. Ollie flies from England to all the NCK events, and he has a cart here in the States. So he supports NCK with every ounce of blood he's got.
Excellent.
So thanks for tuning in, Ollie. Question for Adam: what is the life expectancy of a 60A and 60B?
So by the numbers, the 60B is going to be about 25% tougher in whatever condition that you put those two tires in, the same condition, same cart, same application. So about 25% tougher or longer life expectancy.
Can you repeat that for me again? The B's 25% longer?
20 to 25% more tough. So yeah, it should last about 20 to 25% longer. Both tires being used in the same cart and the same application. If you're able to test them back to back all day long.
Okay. And I don't know if you mentioned the difference between A's and B's. If you could address that again, if you mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. The A is a soft. The R55 and the R60A are considered our soft compounds. And then the R60B is a medium. And then you have the R70, which is a hard, and the R80, which is a super hard.
Okay.
And that compound chart's available on the Hoosier site or the Kart Sport?
We have it on HoosierTire.com. You really got to dig deep to find it, but it's easier to find on HoosierKartsport.com.
Okay.
Uh-oh, you're going to make me go down the rabbit hole. Speaking of Hoosier Tire, I'm going to bring this up real quick because this answers Tompkins Motorsports. This is right off HoosierTire.com. Compounds, 2-cycle, 4-cycle, solo. Suggested starting pressures, not optimum. You're not, the racer has to find optimum on their own, but there's all the.
That's correct. These are all baseline starting points, and you got to tune from there based on your application and track condition.
Ooh, what is the proper method for mounting a Hoosier kart tire?
Yeah, our tires are a bit easier than most. Instead of looking at the arrows, I'm glad you brought that up. Instead of looking for the arrows and trying to remember where or how you mounted them, we have an alphanumeric code. It's 4 digits total, and it's only branded on one sidewall of the tire, and that's an internal code that we use to identify that tire. If you have one of those codes facing up and one of those codes facing down, and you just throw the rims at them, you're good to go. You just got to, once they're mounted, figure out which one's right, which one's left.
Perfect. Are you able to mount tires with just your hands?
Oh, yeah.
I seen him do it.
That's the only way to do it.
it.
It was really tough back in the early days. Remember those, Mark, when those
yes,
super kart tires were like run flats?
And then that one year you come out to Laguna, I believe.
Yeah.
And it was cold, and you mounted a set for me by hand, and it was like Oh, let me go get the rest of them.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah, I
see
slept
here.
well that night. Thanks.
Yeah, that was quite a while ago.
I
Yeah,
keep
it
meaning
was.
to do a tire mounting video with my daughter. She just turned 11. It's like I always thought it would be funny to. Here's an 11-year-old doing it. They
Yeah, we have to
may
get
or
you
may
some
not be a little doctored.
we'll have to get you some softer dirt compounds. That way she can just learn the technique with that instead of these, 70 durometer R80s and 70s.
That's right. Yes.
So
Let's see here. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to have Adam do a quick rundown about rain tires, because we don't really run in the rain that much out here. Up in the northwest they do, and I'm not for sure how they do their rain stuff back east, but when we do run a wet event, people are always asking about air pressure, and same thing again, and it's I just say pump them up to 16 pounds and narrow the cart up and stay out of the lane.
That's right. Yeah, and probably stay clear of the dry line too on most tracks.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, we like to hover around 15 to 16 pounds cold.
Okay.
Usually we say go up 3 psi to start, but we usually end up around 15 or 16. That seems to be a really good air pressure for our rain tires, both 5-inch and 6-inch.
Okay. And then you said a tire increase or air pressure increase. So let's say the average racer out there, he put 11 pounds in his tires, and he comes in and checks them, and the air pressure is up to 14 or 15 pounds. That means that he's just basically sliding around?
Not necessarily. I mean, we typically see 3 pounds of growth, both in 5 and 6-inch tires, usually a little bit less on road course because the corners aren't nearly as tight.
Right.
But on average, we get 3 pounds, and that's with dry air. With nitrogen, we see about 1 pound to 1.5 pounds growth. And
okay.
if you have compressed air, you might see 3.5 to 4. But
so
yeah, go ahead.
So on an average, if I start off at 11 pounds and I go up to 13, maybe 14, then we're still basically in the okay range for starting pressures.
Absolutely. The first question I'm going to ask you when you come off the track is, how'd it feel? I'm going to say, take me from the beginning to the middle to the end of the run. And if you tell me everything felt great, even in the end, and I didn't feel like the cart was getting snappy, or didn't feel like it was overheating the compound, I'm going to say, don't change a thing. If you're telling me that the compound ended up feeling a little bit greasy, or you feel like you had too much spring rate in the back because pressure growth was too high, then yeah, we might bike it down 1 pound. 1 pound goes a long way with these little cart tires, believe it or not.
So you brought up when you just said spring rate, is there cart tuning can be done with tire pressure? If the cart, let's say, is just a hair too tight in the rear, can we adjust air pressure to soften the cart up?
Yeah, absolutely. It's meant to be used as a fine tuning measure, though. If you got to make wholesale changes to it, you're not going to achieve it with air pressure changes. But I'm trying to recall here when we did some karting stuff. I think it was about 1 pound of pressure on average is about 25 pounds to 30 pounds of spring rate.
Okay.
But keep in mind, when you lower air pressure, you're not going to soften up the casing and get more grip out of it per se. You're actually going to help free it up. So you got to think,
right. That's why I'm thinking, do I need to free the cart up? Can I do it with air pressure?
Yes, you can.
Okay. So just like the big boys, air pressure can be used as a tuning tool then.
Absolutely. Again, not wholesale changes, but if you're just fine tuning, if you're pretty close, it'll get you the rest of the way there if you have 10 or 15 more % to go.
Okay.
So since we're talking about tire pressure, if I'm coming off the track, I pull into the pits, I need to check my tire temperature and tire pressure. Can I grab a sandwich, drink my Coke, come back 30 minutes later and check my tires? Or what is that window of opportunity I have? I come off the track at the scales. How long before I start seeing a noticeable change in tire temp from track surface versus pits?
You have about a minute. We like, whenever we do proper tire testing, the cart's got to come off. The cart's got to come off hot, and then we immediately stick. We have 2 people, one doing temps and one doing pressures, and we go after it. We want the most accurate data. Can you still get data after the scale? Sure, but it's not going to be nearly as accurate as within that first minute. And they have to push at the last lap coming in. If they're on a cool down lap, then that's going to give you skewed data as well.
Okay. So, and then typically, let's say you had that, you're in that minute. Let's say you're 2-3 minutes out. I know this is a loaded question, but what is that drop off, that tire pressure change or temp change that you would see? And I understand ambient air temperature.
That's exactly what I was going to touch on. I mean, if you're out in Arizona, it's 110 degrees, you're not going to see much at all. It's going to be fine. But if you're here in Daytona in the wintertime and it's 35, 3 minutes is going to be substantial.
Okay.
So
So
it's just kind of a gut call. It's an instinctual call. You'll know when you start putting your gauge on there, or you put your probe on there, or your infrared device. You're like, yeah, it's a little bit cooler than normal.
Perfect. And then let's see, Eric Maxfield, thanks for tuning in. Another NCK Road Racer, stock Honda. Let's see, I may have missed this earlier. Recommended track temperature maximum versus compound.
Yeah, that's a good question. So 55s and 60As, I would say 235 to 240 is going to be the limit there. Probably 60Bs around 250, and then 70s and 80s 260 to 275
for track temp.
You're talking about, I'm sorry, were you asking for temperature on the tire?
Yeah, well, he's saying recommended track temperature maximum. So I'm assuming Eric means the actual surface of the track.
Yep, sorry about that. I misunderstood the question. So 55 and 60As, I'd say probably for max track temp of probably about around 110, 115. And then for the 60B, about 125. And then 140 for the 70s and the 80s.
And then just to rewind on your answer, your first answer was basically you're checking the tire temp.
Yeah, your max temperature in the tire. If you're getting above that, I mean, you're not going to see blistering, but like the softer compounds above 240 might get greasy on you. Again, it all depends on setup and track.
Okay.
Those max temperatures are the point where the tire might get greasy on you. You'd be hard pressed to make a 70 or an 80, especially on a Briggs, get greasy on you at 265, but there may be those chances where it does.
And then we have another loaded question for you.
So
this is again from Eric. If the durometer of a 55 and a 60A are the same, then what is the difference between them?
That's a fantastic question. I'm glad you asked. The 55 was designed around the needs of a shifter cart. So the tire is a little bit stiffer overall. It's going to be mainly in the rear. So you're going to see a lot more responsiveness. The biggest gain that you see is in quick switchbacks. That tire is not going to be as lazy to respond on the rear axle. That is the main difference. The 60A is really good at being more forgiving, more predictable when it's want to rotate on the rear, whereas the 55 will just carve, stick, and move. And again, it's very responsive to steering inputs and going through faster switchbacks.
So it's not necessarily a compound difference. It's also a design difference.
Correct. Not only a compound, but also a design difference. Exactly.
that was a great question from Eric.
Yes, it was.
Good job, Eric Maxfield.
Well, he's our resident engineer.
Don't hold it against him.
I'm not. No, they were all great questions.
Yeah, there's some good questions coming in. I'm going to take a moment. Hey, Mark, do you want to go down your list of questions?
So far, we have covered everything because it was basically the most common questions were tire pressure and its effect on a colder hot track. We talked about that. How weight affects tire pressure, that was discussed. We talked about compounds. We scratched over tire wear a little bit and what to look for. We also talked about checking tires with a durometer and the best way to test it. And then one of the comments that I get all the time, which we didn't touch on, and it's I put your tires on and they don't work. Well, most people they put them on, and I says, well, you've got to change your setup a little bit. They expect to go from, they run brand A all their life and then they put brand B on it, and the tires are reacting different, and their butt's telling them that they don't like it. And I'm sure you've had that problem. Well, what's the setup?
Yeah, the first question I ask is, what's the cross reference? What's the competitor cross reference? Because it's not always that they run the proper Hoosier cross reference to brand A. So, and if they do, then the next question is, well, what's the kart doing different? And then we start walking through steps to dial in the kart around the Hoosier.
So so like on the West Coast, it's been a long haul to get people to, let's say, go to Hoosiers, because most of the sprint tracks are on spec tires and they're running the cheapest tire they can get. And then our 125 contingent base is right now is about a 50% on Hoosiers versus whatever the latest trick is in the SCUSA tires for the day. So a lot of racers will go, well, if SCUSA's running them, then I'm going to run them. So, and it's that. And then when they do switch over to a tire, it's totally different.
Right. Yeah.
So it's really that, you know, and us being open kart club, you know, I don't push this brand or that brand. It's open.
Right.
But it's those that have switched over to Hoosier seems to love them. You know, which is a great thing. And each year it's getting better, you know, but I don't want to bring my salesman side out on this and say, you know, you got to use these. So,
right. No, it's anytime we have someone that switches from a popular brand on the West Coast to the Hoosier, I mean, the first thing what glares out to me, the differences between the two brands, is that our front tire is way more positive. So going into that, knowing that if you can compensate for it on the chassis, you'll be much further along and probably have a much better experience with the Hoosier in that regard.
Sure.
So it's almost like our front tire has more built-in negative caster in it compared to the other brands.
Right. And then for us, we don't have test days on the big tracks because the West Coast track rental is so expensive.
Yeah.
So it's show up, you get 15, 20 minutes of practice depending on where we're at, and then you run for the day. So
exactly,
you're having to test and race at the same time. And usually when people want to race, the testing part goes out the door.
Yeah, no, I understand. I get it. The tracks over here on the East Coast are just as expensive there. So we're limited on test time on Fridays as well.
Sure.
Well, and I think a big part of it too is, Mark, you hinted at it, where, you know, they're coming in with their different brands of Enco, MG, Levanto, whatever. I think a lot of it is when you're trying to cross over and grab sprint racers to come road racing, they already have variables they got to deal with going road racing.
Sure.
So by eliminating that, they go, oh, I know how to run my Levantos. I know what tire pressure I run at Sears Point on the kart track. I can just make adjustments if I go to Thunder Hill. And so they probably don't look at other brands because that's what they're familiar with.
Right. No, I understand, but usually we get a new road racer in and then he says, well, let me try this set. And it doesn't matter whose brand it is. Usually they'll come back and say, I don't like them. Or, you know, and I'll use Eric Maxfield. Eric put a set on and he says, I love them. And then Eric will try a different manufacturer, and Eric plays with chassis setup a little bit. And Eric is one of them drivers that will dial the tire in. But for the average racer today that don't know even how to mount a tire, just, you know, they go by what butt feels.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's also a lot of the tire is your contact between the vehicle and the track. So it's just not a matter of, oh, I'm going to switch right now and put this new tire on. You have to test it. You have to understand it. And you have to work with it. I mean,
right.
The fast teams spend weeks. Anytime even the manufacturer just changes a compound, they spend weeks on tires.
Sure. What Eric post?
Hoosiers run similar lap times to most anything I have, according to the cross-reference chart.
Okay.
And then let's see, we got Ollie back. How can you tell when tires have expired if left on the cart for some time and still has meat on it?
Well, you're not going to like my answer, but you got to go on the track and feel them. There's no way to look at it. I mean, if there's visible, weather checking or cracking, then yeah, rip them off and put on new. But if visibly you inspect them, they appear to be just fine, I'd put some air in them and go run them and see how they feel.
So in Ollie's case, he needs to take them off the cart and bag them.
Yes. Yeah.
Because Ollie puts the cart in a trailer, goes back to Los Angeles. It gets pulled. If it gets pulled out of the trailer until the next meet, the tires are just in atmosphere and whatever it's stored in. So he can probably prolong the life of his tires by bagging them.
Yeah, I would definitely do that.
Adam's thinking, no, Ollie just needs to buy a new set every race.
No, I'm very budget oriented myself, so I get it.
Well, no, Ollie stays up on his tires, but being Ollie flies in from England, there's nothing being done on his cart for, let's say, 3 months. So it sets in a trailer, so he needs to pull the tires off and bag them.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just giving you guys a hard time.
I know.
Tompkins Motorsports, what lube should you use to mount tires, and what should you stay away from? Great question.
That is a fantastic question. So first of all, never use WD-40 on any kart tire. It has their petroleum-based chemicals that will dry out the sidewalls and will cause premature cracking on the sidewall, especially when they're out in the sun. So never use WD-40. You can use a film of dish soap if you prefer. A lot of times I mount the tires without anything on the 5-inch wheels because there's no big safety lip on them. They have the bead locks on them, and they pop on below the 40 PSI that we have right on the sidewall. But we also use what's called a high performance bead paste made by Hunter Engineering. And that's something that we use in all of our tires. So since it's readily available here in our shop, I just put a quick coat of that on there and then pop the tires on if they won't seat below 40 PSI.
Now I'm questioning how many how-to videos I've done with your WD-40.
Yeah, don't do it again.
now I have to remake those videos.
Yeah, because
simple green
I'm the same way.
Yeah.
In a hurry, I've used WD-40, if I'm at the track, but at home, I usually just use dish soap.
Yeah, it doesn't need much. I mean, you can just put a skim coat of that dish soap on there. The only thing I don't like about it is it doesn't really dry well, whereas our performance paste will dry. That way the tire won't spin on the rim.
And that's what I've heard from dish soap is if it gets wet or it can cause slippage.
Exactly, because it just doesn't want to dry on there. At least if you mount it that morning and go race on it 2 hours later, there's a chance for it to spin.
Let's see. Larry, did you win the championship on Hoosiers?
All right. Hey, congratulations, Larry. Appreciate all the support.
Let's see. Oh, back to Eric Maxfield. So the Hoosiers, they support NCK, and they are made in the USA, and he's never chunked a Hoosier tire ever.
Wonderful news. Yep, we're made in Plymouth, Indiana, USA. So it's about, hour and a half north of Indy and about 30 minutes south of South Bend, Indiana. So where the name comes from, Hoosier.
Hoosier.
Out in the middle of the cornfields.
That's right.
Sort of.
Okay, maybe one of you know this question because I'm not understanding it. Balance beads okay?
Yeah, I'm not sure on that one either. Are you talking about balancing the tires?
Larry, clarify on that one for us. Let's see. All right, I'll give everyone a couple more minutes because I know we try to keep the shows to about an hour.
Okay.
And then otherwise I could do a 4-hour show.
Yeah, these are very good questions. So I could see why the time could pass pretty fast.
Let's see. Balance beads okay. Yes. So balancing the tire. Let's just assume he means balancing the tire.
Yeah, balancing is just fine. Just make sure you secure the weights to the wheel so they don't go flying off.
Let's see. Ollie here. In the old days, I used to put tires in the bath and scrub them with soap and a nail brush and then an airing cupboard for a week before racing. Does that still work with the modern tires?
Yeah, I don't think you really have to do all that. I mean, in the dirt world, they do. They scrub their tires and clean them. But with these, if you scrape them with a heat gun to get any pickup off or any sand, rocks, whatever else, that should suffice.
What about putting them in a bath of Tire Claw?
Tire Claw, is that some type of chemical treatment?
It's a chemical treatment.
Yeah, strictly forbidden. I would not do it.
Yeah. I guess if it's a tire, it doesn't matter, but in spec tire, don't do that. Let's see. Anyone else on the chat lines have any questions? And I think we went down our list.
Yeah, I've covered everything on the list. Adam, you going to Daytona and into this season?
I might. It's too darn cold in Indiana in December, so I might be going down there this year. It's been a while. Are you?
I'm thinking about it. I might have 4 other people that's interested in going, so I'm working on a trip now for Daytona for 2023.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
I've done Ohio, but I'm tired of getting rained on.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. It's hit or miss in Ohio.
Oh, so Larry is asking about balance beads pouring into the valve stem.
Oh, putting BBs inside the tire to balance it.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. I would stick to the wheel weights, honestly.
That one is that an actual thing? Beads in the valve stem?
I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how that would work.
I mean, everything we do balance-wise, from 5-inch kart tires to 18-inch slicks, we always use wheel weights, and not the ones that are actually taped on the inside of the rim, not those that are hammered on the side.
Yeah. All right.
But there is some people that's put stuff in other forms of sports, have put stuff inside the tires, and then assuming that the centrifugal force with the stuff rolling in there will balance out weight-wise.
Yeah, you're probably referring to what, motocross type stuff?
Yeah, that could be what he's referring to, is something that they put in a tire that it is, I don't know if it's liquid or a gel or something like that, but it just kind of, under the centrifugal force, it finds itself to the light side and it'll balance the tire out, I believe.
Yeah, I don't. That's a different discipline than what I'm used to, so I can't comment on that one there, Larry. I apologize for that.
Where's Christopher Hager when you need him?
There you go. Where's the engineers at? Let's get them on the line.
That's right. Yeah, that makes you actually think about that for a second.
They're in the dirt world now, so
yeah. Well, I mean, from an inertia standpoint and everything else, but
yeah, it makes sense. But
I wonder if it's like a liquid bead, and then you like rotate the tire, and because the heavy side's always going to go down. So then nope. I don't got anything for you on that one. All right, let's see. Adam, is there anything you'd like to add to the show?
I think
all of the knowledge you just gave us in an hour.
Well, and then we threw a lot at you. So if there's more questions, feel free to reach out direct to me or to Mark. Mark's pretty knowledgeable as well. Happy to help out. But the durometer aspect, I do want to touch base on that one more time. Make sure you always put the durometer on the high spot of a tire, because sometimes the center's pretty flat. And if you put that needle in a flat area where it can't get full contact and sit flush on the rubber, it can give you a false reading and make the tire appear softer than what it really is. So don't be afraid to rotate the tire 90 degrees and hit 4 or 5 different spots just to get a consistent measurement on it.
All right. And then we have one more question. Let's see. Ollie, do rims really need the bead screws? Yes.
Yeah, I would say they do. I mean, just because the supercart rims, I assume that we're talking about supercart rims here, they don't really have a very large safety lip on them to prevent them from wanting to slide off. They're pretty smooth. At least all the ones that I've dealt with have been pretty smooth, which is why you needed those retention screws on both sides, especially on the 250 twins. So I would definitely continue to use those bead retention screws in the supercart applications and 5-inch applications for that matter.
Plus, it's also a rule.
There you go.
Yeah, it's a rule required.
All right. So, and we have Eric asking, post this again to watch. Yes, Eric. after this live recording, it will be on Facebook and YouTube, so you can go back and review. I am looking at maybe doing a reshare next Monday at 7:30 p.m. on NorCal Mondays.
And then we will also add it to our website page as a link, as a stored video there, and then we'll also possibly have it attached to our Facebook page.
Yeah, all of our live streams at bare minimum stay stored on YouTube. So, and speaking of YouTube, we need 326 more subscribers to reach our 1,000 subscriber mark. Once we hit 1,000 subscribers, we will be giving away a race entry. I'm also working on other prizes to give away throughout the year, but 1,000 subscribers will give away a race entry. If you are a NCK Road Racer, you'll also get your tires and fuel paid for. So for more details, you got to follow NorCal Karters on YouTube and on Facebook. So, yeah. Hoosier distribution. Larry, we need longer questions.
I think so you have Kart Sport in the Midwest that sells the tires, and then I'm sure there's Eastern small dealers like myself and my son, and then on the West Coast there's RLV.
Correct. RLV is in the West Coast.
Is the West Coast, and then
That's the main hub out west.
Kart Sports is the major distributor, and then from there it trickles down to everybody else.
Yes. Yep. I would agree. And if you're uncertain on who the local dealer is, I would just contact either RLV on the West Coast or Hoosier Kart Sport here in St. Louis to find out where a local dealer is located.
There you go. Yeah, HoosierTires.com.
Yeah, so this map is more. This is from HoosierTire.com, and this applies more to our bigger car stuff. You know, oval track asphalt, oval track dirt, drag racing, and larger circuit racing tires. The karting distribution is just a little bit different.
And there is a list of dealers on the RLV site for the West Coast, and I'm sure that Kart Sport has the same thing.
Yeah, I would think so.
So right. we get our tires through RLV. So and they're good people to work with.
Yep, big supporters of karting in general.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yep. So Adam, on behalf of myself and NCK, thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
This was great information, and it was great seeing you. And I don't think there was a bad question asked. So
no, very good question. So I appreciate your guys' time and inviting me on the show. So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, Adam.
You're more than welcome.
How would you like to wrap up your portion of the show, Adam?
Thanks for having me. This has just been it's a lot of fun to get on here and help educate, racers that are new to the sport, racers that have been in for a while, and those that may even move on. So just thanks again.
Thank you. And you supply tires from karting to cars. So
yeah, it's sometimes I gotta take a second to think about the application, because we have 5-inch kart slicks and reins, then we go up to 20-inch R7s and 18-inch slicks, race on GT3 and GT4 applications. So for a minute, you got to think, okay, air pressure. Let me think about this car and the weight. We got cars that weigh 3,600 pounds down to karts that weigh 285. So it's quite the range, but it's definitely a fun deal for sure.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely.
And then if nothing else is coming in, let's see here. Oh, that's an interesting view. We'll do that view. So if nothing else is going to come in, I'm going to wrap up the show. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Mark, for joining us.
Thank you.
If you want to hang tight after I end the broadcast, we'll just wrap it up on that end. But thank you, everyone, for joining. You had some great questions that came in. Again, the live streams can be rewatched on YouTube under NorCal Karters. And as of the past 6 months, also on Facebook on the NorCal Karters channel. But 326 more subscribers is what we're looking for to get to 1,000 subscribers. And at bare minimum, we will be giving away a race entry. Not sure how I'm going to do that giveaway yet. It'll be something fun. It'll be a special show. But if you're a member of NCK Road Racing or have raced with them last year, because NCK is a sponsor of NorCal Karters, you will also get your fuel and tires sponsored. So if you're an industry member out there and you would like to donate to the program to have your product shared with racers, I'm looking for ideas too on how to give stuff away. I don't want it just to sit on the back shelf and go, here, it's a giveaway. Let's make it fun. Let's make it exciting with the ultimate goal of growing the sport. So with that being said, join Mark, myself, and Rob Suarez from Aluminos tonight at 7:30 as we do our NCK raffle. And remember, if we all just get one person in the sport, we will double by next year.